Did you know that old Hollywood legends like Frank Sinatra, Charlie Chaplin, and Spencer Tracy were sent to prison, not just once, but multiple times? And they weren't alone. Many other Golden Age celebrities faced arrests for some truly bizarre and embarrassing reasons. Today, we're shedding light on the 20 most shocking celebrity arrests from the Golden Age of Hollywood. Stay tuned and watch until the end. Frank Sinatra, Bergen County, New Jersey, 1938. 23-year-old Frank Sinatra was still singing one-night stands with the Harry James Orchestra when Bergen County police took the mugshot that would follow him for life. The complaint, filed by a former girlfriend, alleged seduction, a now-defunct statute that punished men who lured a woman of good repute into intercourse under promise of marriage. When investigators discovered the accuser was already married, prosecutors pivoted to an adultery count, arrested Sinatra a second time, and photographed him again in the same pinstripe suit. Bail was set at $500, which the singer paid on the spot. Both charges were dismissed within weeks. Court clerks later recalled that reporters outnumbered lawyers in the cramped Hackensack hearing room, all angling for a glimpse of the cocky kid with the blue eyes and battered fedora. Sinatra would joke in later years that he never sang better than he did the night after the bust. Relief, perhaps, or the first hint that notoriety could be turned into currency. The twin arrests also cemented a lifelong wariness of the press. From that point forward, the singer's publicists insisted on vetting every photo session, lest another unflattering image slip free. Errol Flynn, Los Angeles, 1942–43. At the height of his swashbuckling fame, Errol Flynn found himself cast as the villain in a real-life courtroom drama. Two teenagers, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee, claimed the 33-year-old actor had assaulted them separately, one aboard his yacht Sirocco, the other at a Bel Air party. District Attorney John F. Cochran filed 3 counts of statutory rape, a charge that carried a potential 30-year sentence. The trial opened on January 11, 1943, and instantly became front-page news. Flynn's defense attorney, the formidable Jerry Geisler, countered with aggressive cross-examinations aimed at the girl's credibility. After 5 weeks, 44 witnesses, and a jury sequestered overnight, Judge Leslie Still read the verdict, not guilty on all counts. Outside the Hall of Justice, Flynn flashed a grin and quipped, "I haven't become an American citizen for nothing. This shows the system works." Yet the damage lingered. Warner Brothers quietly dropped his contract's morals clause. Gossip columnists labeled him in like Flynn, and the actor's box office power never fully recovered. Flynn later conceded in his memoir, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, that the ordeal accelerated his slide into alcohol and debt, shadows that followed him until his death in 1959. Robert Mitchum, Laurel Canyon, 1948. Late on the night of August 31, 1948, Vice detectives slipped through the back door of a modest bungalow on Ridpath Drive. Inside, they found rising star Robert Mitchum, actress Lila Leeds, and 2 friends passing a single marijuana cigarette. Mitchum, fresh off out of the past, greeted the officers with trademark fatalism. "Well, this is the end of everything. My career, my marriage, everything." Charged with conspiracy to possess narcotics, Mitchum refused studio attempts to hush things up, pleading nolo contendere instead. Superior Court Judge Clement Nye sentenced him to 60 days, half in L.A. County Jail, half on an honor farm in Castaic, where photographers captured the lanky actor trimming weeds in denim overalls. Surprisingly, the punishment became a publicity coup. Howard Hughes re-released Out of the Past with taglines about the star who wouldn't stay down, and RKO's Rachel and the Stranger opened to record grosses. Mitchum emerged on March 30, 1949, telling reporters he'd learned jail's just like Palm Springs, without the riff-raff. The scandal wrecked Leeds' career, But Mitchum's laconic cool only deepened. For the rest of his life, he dismissed the bust as just one of those things, an attitude that burnished his rebel legend. Mae West, New York City, 1927. By 1927, Mae West had already written, produced, and starred in Sex, a bawdy play about a Montreal prostitute who outwits high society hypocrites. After 375 sold-out performances and repeated warnings from moral crusaders, the NYPD Vice Squad raided the 63rd Street Theater on February 9th. West and her entire cast were charged with obscenity and corrupting the morals of youth. During the sensational Jefferson Market trial, West disarmed the courtroom with quips, but the jury convicted. Judge George Donnellan fined her $500 and sentenced her to 10 days on Welfare Island. Ever the publicist, West wore silk panties beneath her prison denim and launched with reporters in the warden's office. She served 8 days and emerged to a throng of photographers. The box office for her next show, Diamond Lil, doubled overnight. Biographers note that West donated her jail mattress to a Salvation Army shelter, claiming she couldn't sleep on anything that had lost its reputation. The episode cemented her image as America's unapologetic avatar of sexual frankness. Proof, she said, that, "When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better." Roscoe Arbuckle, San Francisco, 1921 to 1922. Labor Day weekend, 1921. Comedian Roscoe Arbuckle checked into San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel for a Prohibition-era party suite stocked with bootleg gin. Actress Virginia Rapp fell ill during the revelry and died 4 days later of peritonitis. Press mogul William Randolph Hearst sees the story, and police charged Arbuckle with manslaughter amid lurid rumors that his 266-pound frame had crushed the frail starlet. The first 2 trials ended in hung juries. At the third, defense attorney Gavin McNabb produced medical experts who testified Rapp suffered from chronic cystitis and a ruptured bladder unrelated to assault. On April 12, 1922, the jury deliberated 6 minutes before voting acquittal and issuing an unprecedented apology to Arbuckle. Legally exonerated, he was nevertheless blacklisted by major studios, his films pulled from circulation. He spent the next decade directing under pseudonyms and died in 1933, hours after signing a comeback contract with Warner Brothers. Modern scholars view the case as an early example of trial by tabloid, where sensational headlines outweighed evidence, and a Hollywood career was destroyed despite a not guilty verdict. Charlie Chaplin, Los Angeles, 1944. By the early 1940s, Charlie Chaplin's off-screen romances had begun to overshadow his screen genius. But nothing matched the firestorm that erupted when a federal grand jury indicted him for violating the Mann Act, transporting a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. The complainant was Joan Barry, a 22-year-old aspiring actress whose brief affair with the 52-year-old comedian had already spawned a paternity suit. In March 1944, Chaplin surrendered at the downtown Los Angeles Federal Building, was fingerprinted, and released on $10,000 bail while newsreel cameras rolled. The trial opened in June before Judge J.F.T. O'Connor. Prosecutors framed Chaplin as a moral menace, citing train tickets he allegedly bought for Barry to join him in New York. Defense counsel Jerry Giesler countered that Barry had traveled of her own volition and produced telegrams in which she begged Chaplin to see her. After 13 days of testimony and 16 hours of jury deliberation, the verdict came back not guilty on all counts. Reporters noted that Chaplin looked drained but defiant as he exited the courtroom, yet the victory rang hollow. Gossip columns, FBI surveillance files, and Barry's separate paternity action left his public image battered. Biographer Scott Amon argues the Mann Act spectacle helped push Chaplin into self-exile 8 years later, when the U.S. revoked his re-entry permit. Francis Farmer, Santa Monica, 1942 to 43. On an October night in 1942, studio contract player Francis Farmer ignored wartime blackout rules and barreled down Santa Monica Boulevard with her headlights blazing. Patrolmen pulled her over, smelled liquor, and booked the 28-year-old actress for drunk driving, driving without a license, and resisting arrest. Newspapers relished the contrast between Farmer's ethereal screen presence and her combative booking room tirade. One officer recalled she hissed, "You bore me," before spending the night in jail. Farmer paid a $250 fine and received probation, but the legal saga had only begun. When she later missed a probation check-in, a bench warrant was issued. Hauled back to court in January 1943, Farmer erupted, shouting at the judge, throwing an inkwell, and finally being wrestled to the floor as spectators gasped. Held in contempt, she was led from the courtroom in a straitjacket, an image that splashed across wire services and effectively ended her Paramount career. Over the next 8 years, Farmer cycled through psychiatric wards, including Western State Hospital, where she would allege brutal mistreatment. Historians debate whether the initial DUI was the trigger or merely the public tipping point of long-simmering mental health struggles, but all agree the blackout arrest set in motion one of Hollywood's grimmest downward spirals. Billie Holiday, New York City, 1947. At 32, Billie Holiday could silence a nightclub with the first aching notes of strange fruit. Yet federal agents viewed her as public enemy number one in their nascent war on drugs. Acting on orders from Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Chief Harry Anslinger, who despised both her race and her protest anthem, plainclothes officers stormed Room 8F of Manhattan's Hotel Griswold on May 16, 1947. They claimed to find a small envelope of heroin in Holiday's bathroom and arrested her for violation of the Harrison Narcotics Act. Handcuffed to a gurney at Metropolitan Hospital, she went through agonizing withdrawal while detectives questioned her. In a swift July trial, she pleaded guilty, hoping for treatment, but Judge John M. Woolsey sentenced her to a year and a day at Alderson Federal Reformatory for Women in West Virginia. The conviction revoked her New York cabaret card, barring her from any club that served alcohol and gutting her livelihood. Holiday later wrote in Lady Sings the Blues that she left prison without the one thing I loved, singing in a New York club. Historians note the disparity. White stars, such as Judy Garland, received quiet medical care for addiction, while Holiday faced punitive spectacle. The 1947 bust marked the beginning of relentless surveillance that would culminate in a second arrest, on her deathbed, in 1959. Spade Cooley, Bakersfield, 1961. Spade Cooley, once crowned King of Western Swing and a Republic Pictures bit player, watched his rhinestone kingdom collapse on April 3, 1961, inside his Kern County ranch house. That evening, after accusing wife Ella Mae of infidelity, Cooley beat and stomped her to death while their 14-year-old daughter, Melody, cowered nearby. Sheriff's deputies arrived to find Ella Mae's body sprawled on the master bedroom floor. Cooley, glassy-eyed, muttered, "She tried to kill herself." A grand jury indicted him for first-degree murder. The trial became the longest in county history. Defense attorney P. Basil Lambros floated an insanity plea, then abruptly withdrew it, forcing the jury to weigh stark forensic evidence: ruptured organs, a crushed skull, and Melody's tearful testimony that Daddy kept kicking. After 19 hours of deliberation, on August 21, 1961, jurors returned a guilty verdict. Facing the gas chamber, Cooley instead received a life sentence with possible parole after 7 years, thanks partly to fans' petition drives. In 1969, granted a 72-hour furlough to perform at a sheriff's benefit concert, the 58-year-old collapsed backstage from a heart attack and died before parole could be finalized. Music historians cite the case as a macabre footnote. A star who once outsold Bob Wills, reduced to a cautionary tale of fame, curdled into lethal violence. Stan Laurel, Los Angeles, 1938. In October 1938, as blockheads played first-run theaters, comedian Stan Laurel steered his Chrysler sedan the wrong way down Reseda Boulevard at 60 miles per hour. Officer J.E. Clifton pulled him over, smelled liquor, and escorted the usually mild-mannered funny man to Van Nuys jail on a drunk driving charge. The Los Angeles Times covered the arraignment with wry delight, noting that Laurel's courtroom dialogue sounded like an outtake from a Laurel and Hardy short. He blamed trouble with the wife for his binge and pleaded not guilty. During the two-day trial, defense counsel argued the comedian's erratic weaving was due to fatigue, not intoxication. Prosecutors countered with breath odor testimony and Clifton's observation that Laurel fumbled for his license as if searching for a lost gag. After hours of deliberation, the jury hung 9-3 for conviction, forcing Judge Benjamin Orfanel to declare a mistrial. The district attorney quietly dropped the case rather than retry a beloved star. Laurel issued a public apology and entered a brief sanitarium stay, citing exhaustion. While the incident barely dented his career, it underscored the era's double standard. A marquee name could survive legal scrape-ups that would sink a lesser performer. For Laurel, the arrest became an anecdote, later retold by the arresting officer's descendants, of the day slapstick spilled onto a San Fernando Valley roadway. Spencer Tracy, Hollywood, 1937. The MGM fixers worked overtime the night Spencer Tracy plowed a Packard coupe into a parked sedan behind Lee Francis's discreet Beverly Boulevard brothel. Police on the scene described the two-time Oscar winner as unsteady, red-eyed, and reeking of bourbon. Tracy, mortified that the tabloids might discover both the liquor and the location, surrendered without protest and spent the night in the old Lincoln Heights jail on a misdemeanor hit-and-run Joshua drunk driving booking. Studio attorney Eddie Mannix posted $1,000 bail before dawn, then launched the familiar containment drill, a quiet cash settlement for the car's owner, a sealed municipal court file, and, most important, a press blackout. Nevertheless, wire service stringers got wind of the incident. Variety hinted at an A-list star's midnight smash-up, and the Los Angeles Mirror ran a blind item about an Academy lad who can't hold his sauce. Tracy's biographers later tied the arrest to his first frantic attempt at sobriety. He checked into St. John's Hospital under an alias 3 weeks later and dried out for nearly 6 months. The record was officially expunged in 1945, but MGM's confidential accident ledger and stray references in contemporary gossip columns confirmed that even Hollywood's most respected actor was not immune to the bottle's collateral damage. Katharine Hepburn, El Dorado, Kansas, 1933. On a summer evening in 1933, Katharine Hepburn was barreling down U.S. Highway 54 toward Wichita, late for a touring performance of The Warrior's Husband. A Butler County patrolman clocked her roadster at 68 miles per hour, more than double the posted limit, and discovered she had no valid driver's license. Hauled before a justice of the peace in the tiny oil boom town of El Dorado, the 26-year-old starlet paid a $10 fine for speeding and operating a vehicle without a permit, then recorded the episode with wry disdain in her tour diary. Idiots. Apparently, a woman may not drive faster than a cow. Those handwritten notes survive in the New York Public Library's Hepburn Papers, where she later underlined the entry and added, "Lesson: always charm the constabulary, unless one is in a hurry." The incident never reached the national press, but it fed Hepburn's lifelong reputation for flinty independence behind the wheel. Mechanics at RKO recalled that she insisted on changing her own spark plugs during bringing up baby. Decades later, the Kansas arrest slip, yellowed, edges singed, was framed on the wall of her Fenwick Estate garage. A private trophy commemorating the night Kate outran both the clock and convention. Tallulah Bankhead, London, 1936. Tallulah Bankhead's transatlantic notoriety peaked on a foggy January morning in 1936 when a Metropolitan Police constable flagged down her cream-colored Lagonda for weaving through Knightsbridge at an estimated 45 miles per hour. The Alabama-born stage sensation, midway through a triumphant West End run of Anthony and Cleopatra, greeted the officer with a throaty, "Darling, surely there's been some ghastly mistake." Breath heavy with gin, she failed a curbside sobriety test and spent 6 hours in the Bow Street Station's women's cell, still wearing a mink stole over silk pajamas. Arraigned for reckless driving and endangering pedestrians, Bankhead pled guilty, explaining to the magistrate that she'd been racing the dawn to fetch aspirin. The court fined her £25 and suspended her license for 6 months, a penalty the actress dismissed as a bargain matinee. Fleet Street tabloids revealed the spectacle. The Daily Mirror headlined, "Tallulah takes a tumble, speeding star grounded." Far from harming her career, the bust amplified her devil-may-care persona. Ticket sales spiked, and playwright Noel Coward sent a telegram reading, "Reckless on stage, reckless on road. Brava." Bankhead later joked that London was the only city where the bobbies give autographs before handcuffs. Bing Crosby, Hollywood, 1929. In the pre-dawn chill of 14 November 1929, a 27-year-old Bing Crosby, still just the tenor from Paul Whiteman's Rhythm Boys trio, rounded the corner at Orange Drive and Hollywood Boulevard, misjudged the turn into the porte cochere of the Roosevelt Hotel, and slammed his brand-new Durant coupe into a lamppost. Prohibition agents on routine patrol heard the crash, and spotting broken liquor bottles rolling across the pavement, quickly pieced together an open and shut drunk driving charge. They hauled the future crooner to LAPD's Central Division, booked him under the Volstead Act, and locked him in a concrete cell that normally held bootleggers. Because local editors were busy with stock market aftershocks, the arrest merited only a 2-line police blotter note. The real paper trail survived in a yellowing docket, later discovered by Los Angeles Times columnist Cecilia Rasmussen, who reported that the mugshot itself had vanished. "Quietly bought off," she wrote, by Paramount lawyers determined to keep their prospects' slate clean. Inside the cell, Crosby shivered under a threadbare blanket and phoned pianist Harry Barris for warmer covers. He would spend 3 nights in county jail, long enough to miss a lucrative Montmartre cafe booking and to be dropped from Whiteman's big Technicolor Review King of Jazz, a blow that could have ended his screen hopes before they began. In court the following Monday, he arrived straight from a golf round, clad in green +4s and an orange sweater. Judge Wallace Woolwine was unimpressed, fined him $50, lectured him on the 18th Amendment, and sentenced him to a nominal 60-day term that was almost immediately commuted to time served, a leniency later attributed to studio pressure and overcrowded jails. Biographer Gary Giddens notes that Crosby called the episode "the best investment I ever made," because the scare forced him to rein in his drinking, at least temporarily, and refocus on radio, where he soon landed a solo Old Gold cigarettes contract. Yet Giddens also argues the crash foreshadowed a lifelong flirtation with Scotch and fast cars. Over the next 4 decades, Crosby would collect speeding citations from Palm Springs to Pebble Beach. Still, the 1929 bust remained Hollywood's best-kept secret until Rasmussen's 2007 archival scoop confirmed what Crosby had admitted only once, during a 1950 New Year's broadcast. "I spent the holidays in Durance Vile, and brother, the acoustics were terrible." Red Skelton, Beverly Hills, 1951. Television's favorite clown spent a sobering night without a laugh track on July 18, 1951, when Beverly Hills officers stopped Richard "Red" Skelton's Cadillac after it sideswiped a palm on Sunset Boulevard. Witnesses told police the comedian had been entertaining friends at Romanoff's, downing highballs to celebrate a Red Skelton show ratings win. The breathalyzer read .18. Skelton was charged with driving under the influence and held on $750 bail. Reporters flocked to the station, but the star politely declined to perform his famous Guzzler's Gin routine. instead issuing a terse apology. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight the joke's on me." Municipal Judge Joseph Perry fined him $300, suspended his license for 90 days, and ordered attendance at the county's new alcohol education program, an early forerunner of today's DUI schools. Variety ran the headline, "Red Seeing Red, Busted on Sunset," while sponsors at Johnson's Wax briefly considered yanking ads before audience mail ran 10-1 in the comic's favor. Skelton incorporated the ordeal into his act, riffing that the cell door closed faster than Clem Cadiddlehopper's barn. Behind the humor, colleagues noticed he swapped scotch for ginger ale at rehearsals. "The Beverly Hills bust," he admitted years later, "taught me the punchline comes after the crash." Marlon Brando, Puyallup River, Washington, 1964. When Marlon Brando arrived at a remote bend of the Puyallup River on March 2, 1964, he wasn't promoting a film. He was lending star wattage to a Native American fish-in. Members of the Puyallup tribe, barred by state game wardens from exercising treaty fishing rights, had adopted the tactics of Southern sit-ins. They would fish without a license, invite arrest, and force the courts to confront 19th-century treaties. Clad in waders and a windbreaker, Brando cast a net beside tribal elder Bob Satiacum, telling reporters, "Treaties are the law. If the law is broken, we all pay." Wardens arrested Brando and Episcopal priest John Yarian for violating state conservation codes. Both men were booked, photographed, and released without formal charges the same afternoon on orders from the Pierce County prosecutor, who feared a publicity bonfire. Local headlines dubbed the site Brando's Landing, a name that endures on tribal maps. Although the arrest vanished from Brando's official studio biography, the actor kept the booking slip in a desk drawer until his death, calling it the only souvenir that ever mattered. A decade later, the Bolt decision upheld the tribe's fishing rights. "Proof," Brando said, "that sometimes the cameras really can change the picture." George Raft, Las Vegas, 1965. George Raft, the actor whose slicked-back hair and ice-cold stare helped define Hollywood's gangster archetype in the 1930s and 40s, spent much of his later life blurring the lines between his cinematic persona and real-world underworld connections. But in November 1965, at the age of 65, Raft faced a reckoning not in a film noir plot, but in federal court. A grand jury indicted him for willful income tax evasion, alleging he failed to report over $180,000 in cash gifts, casino marker write-offs, and unreported appearance fees tied to his high-profile role as a casino greeter and host at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas. Raft had long been a fixture on the Strip, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, and flipping that trademark silver coin, always tails. But prosecutors accused him of failing to declare vast amounts of under-the-table income that flowed through his hands while mingling with whales and VIPs. FBI agents arrested him at his Flamingo Road bungalow, though he was released within the hour after posting a $25,000 bond. In a statement to the press, Raft said, "I never cheated a soul, especially Uncle Sam." The government's case never reached a full trial. In April 1966, Raft pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor tax charge, paid $85,000 in back taxes and penalties, and was sentenced to 1 year of probation. Legally, he walked away. But professionally, the damage was done. Nevada gaming regulators revoked his work permit, and Raft was blacklisted for further employment at any state-licensed casino. For a man once photographed with Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky, the irony was heavy. It was not the mob, but the IRS, that forced his exit. Raft faded into European B-movies and cameo roles. By the time of his death in 1980, critics wrote that the man who once ruled the shadows had lost his last job to a balance sheet, not a bullet. Johnny Weissmuller, Chicago, 1948. Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic champion turned silver screen Tarzan, found himself in an altogether different kind of jungle On July 17, 1948, when Illinois state troopers clocked him tearing down Lakeshore Drive in his Packard convertible at a staggering 74 miles per hour, well above the city's posted limit. The 44-year-old actor, fresh from a promotional swim meet where he was still wearing swimming trunks under a trench coat, was stopped just south of Grant Park. What happened next became Chicago legend. According to the official arrest report, Weissmuller leapt from the driver's seat in a flurry of indignation, demanding to know why he'd been pulled over. When the trooper attempted to issue a citation, Weissmuller, even the physical performer, allegedly swatted the officer's cap clean off, sending it sailing into traffic. The move earned him charges of reckless driving, speeding, and resisting arrest. He was taken to the South Clark Street lockup, where, still in swim gear, he reportedly gripped the iron bars in full Tarzan stance. An image quickly snapped by a Chicago Tribune photographer. The next morning, the headline read, "Tarzan Tangles with Traffic Law." In court, Weissmuller remained in character, joking to the judge that he was just practicing vine-swinging Chicago style. He paid a $150 fine and was released with a warning. Executives at Columbia Pictures, who had just launched his Jungle Jim serials, feared the arrest might sour their family-friendly brand. But far from damaging his image, the stunt seemed to enhance his mythos. Children reportedly flocked to theaters to see the man who could outpace not only wild animals, but also a state patrol car. Back home in Florida, Weissmuller later framed the citation next to his Olympic medals, quipping, "After 20 years in Hollywood, they still couldn't catch me without a net." David O. Selznick, Beverly Hills, 1941. Producer David O. Selznick had already conquered Hollywood with Gone with the Wind, when Beverly Hills police served a sealed warrant at his North Cannon Drive office in August 1941. A druggist had tipped authorities that the 39-year-old mogul was purchasing Benzedrine inhalers by the dozen, extracting the amphetamine sulfate, and consuming it orally to maintain marathon workdays. Officers confiscated 2 jars of pulverized tablets. Selznick was cited for unlawful possession of a prescription stimulant under California's new Dangerous Drug Act. The case was quietly pleaded out. A $2,500 fine, suspended 6-month sentence, and a court-ordered medical evaluation. Studio secretaries noticed no slowdown. Selznick simply shifted to physician-written scripts. Evelyn Keyes later recalled him licking Benzedrine crystals from his palm during story conferences. Biographer David Thompson argues the 1941 bust marked the moment Selznick's legendary memo-dictating mania tipped from eccentricity into addiction, shaping the frenzied productions of Duel in the Sun and Since You Went Away. The arrest record vanished after the producer's death in 1965, but the anecdote survives in industry lore as a cautionary tale about the pill-powered engine behind Hollywood's greatest epics. Clark Gable, Los Angeles, 1933, The Rumor versus the Record. For decades, whisper campaigns insisted that Clark Gable, already the king of Hollywood, had been arrested in 1933 after a drunken hit-and-run that killed dancer Tosca Rulian, only to have MGM fixers substitute a studio driver to take the rap. The legend resurfaced so often that in 2003, the fact-checking site Snopes launched a full archival dive. Court dockets, LAPD blotters, and coroner's logs revealed no Gable booking, no fatality matching Rulian's name, and no civil settlement. Studio correspondence does record a public intoxication citation issued to Gable outside the Brown Derby in May 1933. A $15 fine, no jail, but nothing resembling the lurid manslaughter tale. Historians now cite the episode as an early example of how gossip metastasized in the tabloid era. Combine Gable's well-known fondness for Scotch, MGM's aggressive publicity machine, and the public's appetite for scandal, and a minor sidewalk scuffle ballooned into an apocryphal homicide. The Snopes verdict, false, hasn't killed the myth. Like Gable's on-screen charisma, it refuses to fade. Yet the paper trail shows the star's real legal scrape was a misdemeanor quickly paid and filed away. Proof that sometimes the truth is less cinematic than the story we want to believe. From Sinatra's mob-era scandals to Clark Gable drum solo, these arrests reveal a spectrum of rebellion: political, personal, and just plain bizarre. Some became footnotes, others fueled redemption arcs. Let us know in the comments which story shocked you most, and subscribe for more deep dives into fame's underbelly.